Hi there, folks. Thank you for joining us for this laboratory report for June 2023 here at the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy. June was a slower month. We had 2 solid weeks of work and then an entire week of travel and prep for travel during the last part of the month. But let's go ahead and elaborate. We started off the month by making our last batch of spagyrosomal vitamin C for the summer. We never ship between summer solstice and fall equinox, and so we got that out, got as many bottles out the door as we possibly could. We will hopefully start making that again in limited 50 bottle batches again, starting autumnal equinox, so just after September 22nd or so. But that is entirely contingent upon the availability of the materials. And if you've stayed up to date with the things that we've been doing, you will know that that's kind of been a perpetual issue, supply issues, over the last, I don't know, I'd say almost a year now. We also made a 1-gallon batch of Trifula spagyric tincture for the Stern Method webinar that I did. I can't remember the date of it now. I want to say it was something like Friday the 23rd. That being said, for those of you who aren't familiar, the Stern Method is a really awesome resource for all chronic disease prevention and treatment, but specifically working with cancer and autoimmune diseases like eczema and psoriasis. So Triphalad is a fantastic herb. It's been one of our favorites. Those of you who are subscribed to the Spagyrics of the Month Club know that Triphalad actually came out along with a number of other Ayurvedic herbs for the month of June. And yeah, it has many different uses because it helps to balance all 3 doshas, or energetic constitutions. And yeah, basically within Ayurveda, they theorize that everything has these 3 aspects, these 3 doshas to them, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, or VPK as it's commonly talked about. Spagyric theory, the way, or Aurelian spagyric theory, and even Paracelsian spagyric theory also feels very much so the same way, that everything is composed of salt, spirit, well, we could call that salt, sulfur, and mercury, the body, the soul, and the spirit. So they they theorize the elements a little bit differently, but they see very much so eye to eye. So much so that Frater Albertus really wanted to use Ayurvedic physicians in order to prescribe spagyrics. And his whole goal with Tristar was to be able to get that going and have an education wing, have a research wing, and have a prescription-based wing that would be able to produce remedies for people who were trained in their education wing to prescribe spagyric remedies. You know, Robert Allen Bartlett is still kind of working towards that whole Tristar vision, and in my own way, I'm definitely working towards it, although I find that interlacing it with Ayurveda is maybe not the best way, because that's a totally separate tradition. Paracelsus was not using Ayurveda, he was using spagyric medicine, he founded spagyric medicine, and so I'm trying to do my own thing in the vein of what Paracelsus would have done, or trying to make him proud, I guess we could say. But yeah, so Triphalad, though, even though it is an Ayurvedic herb, is absolutely fantastic and does the same thing. It balances out the soul, the spirit, and body inside of any individual that it's given to. And it's also good for cats and dogs, and I think also horses and a number of other different types of animals as well, because of its flavor profile and its medicinal profiles. So very, very interesting, very fascinating. I gave an entire lecture on that. It should be posted up on our website before too long. As of the time I'm making this video, I don't think it's on there yet. But yeah, that was really fantastic. And we held a special just for people who are part of the Stern Method. I've been featured on there a couple of times now, so if you guys are interested in topics of cancer and alternative medicine and psoriasis and eczema solutions and skin health and preventing chronic disease through healthy living and things like that, they're an Excellent, excellent source. And every time I go on there, we offer unique specials that are only offered to them. So you may consider keeping an eye out for those here in the future. I mentioned earlier that we were out for an entire week of June. We were at the Fire to Fire Primitive Skills Gathering. That's our very favorite gathering of the year. And this year was a little bit slower than other years for both Nori and I. Nori spent her entire time just making a pair of moccasins, really awesome moccasins, celestial pattern on them. One of them has a star, the other has a moon on them. They're absolutely gorgeous, but it took her a lot of time of sewing and cutting and unstitching some things and restitching some things and making some adjustments. For those of you who have made moccasins, you know that that can be a little tricky to find the way of making them that's just going to fit perfectly and snugly and not have too much extra space to them. So at any rate, she did that. I processed and butchered a Navajo Churro along with my brother and a few other folks under the tutelage of Chris King from wildmeatretreat.com. He's based just out of Sedona. He came up to the gathering and we had a wild Navajo Churro. Well, it's not wild. It was a Navajo Churro sheep that was donated just for the cause, and I was actually chosen and able to take the life of this animal. It was done very ceremoniously and in prayer. I made offerings to the soil where its blood was spilt, and we used every single part of that animal with the exception of the stomach and the intestines, which we would have used had I only had, we were in a pretty primitive setting, but if we would have had some meat grinders and things like that, then we could have taken care of that and made some sausages and other things. Also, we were working on a little bit of a limited time frame too. We only had 2 days in order to process everything, and didn't have refrigeration and other things like that. So, but that being said, the eyes, the entire spinal section, the skull, the hooves. I mean, literally every single part of that animal was used. Its brain. It was a really, really beautiful experience and very delicious. I've never had sheep that freshly processed. Every time I've ever eaten lamb or sheep, it has come from the store, and so to be able to have it right there was really amazing. The belly meat, the bacon, so to speak, was extraordinary. The backstrap, the tenderloin, all those things, they were absolutely amazing. So it was really, really beautiful to have that experience. And we were able to bring home some stew meat as well. Let's see. After we got back from Fire to Fire, we had a really busy week. I performed IDF investigation on 15 air and leaf herbs. Earlier in the month, I performed an investigation on 10 new roots that I had never worked on before in order to find IDF standards for those and then be able to produce them and test it out. Every single thing that we made looks absolutely fantastic and phenomenal. The potency is definitely something that I am very, very pleased with. During that time, we also had Cody Smith in town for about 5 days. He was an apprentice that came in because he just graduated from an herbal program where he's now a licensed herbalist. However, he had been here once before in October, where he came to study for our with us in an immersion study program. Last October, and he wanted to have a little bit more lab experience. So he said, "Hey, I'm available for a few days if you'd like to have me out." And we did a lot of stuff. We harvested some perennials from our alchemiculture gardens. We got chamomile flowers, wild carrot seeds, St. John's wort, flowering thyme, lavender, California poppy, and yarrow flowers. We dehydrated and processed those and jarred them up during the time he was here. We also started 15 new leaf and aerial tinctures that we had never made before. Actually, some of them we'd made, like lemon balm, I've made hundreds of times and a few things, but there were many herbs like guduchi that I'd never worked with before, at least in a spagyric capacity. and we filtered out the biomass from 10 different herbs made, or 10 different tinctures made from root herbs that, again, most of those or almost all of those I had never worked with before, including hydrangea root, stone root, gravel root. Yeah, there were quite a few others. Let's see. We also began the monumental task of consolidating and organizing our herbal apothecary and reduced things down from 84-ounce jars down to 32-ounce jars. And that made a whole lot of space, and we were able to send Cody home with a good amount of herbs. In most cases, the jars had enough that we could consolidate them without getting rid of any product, but in many cases, especially for traditional Chinese herbs, you have to be a licensed traditional Chinese herbalist in order to get access to these herbs, and then you can only order them in like 500 gram quantities, which is like half a kilo quantities, and that is so much more than what we need for spagyric purposes. Most of those herbs do not have essential oil content that is significant in any way, shape, or form, and so we just always have an excess of these Chinese herbs. Sadly, Chinese herbalists are not too terribly familiar with the spagyric process or the potency, and so they don't know how to prescribe them so very well. And I'm legally restricted from telling and educating Chinese herbalists on how to be able to do that. So if they happen to know, and if they happen to take my classes, and they can also prescribe Chinese herbs, then they can work with spagyrics, but there's a breakdown of legality that happens where I have a tremendous amount of knowledge. I can teach Ayurvedic practitioners, I can teach Chinese practitioners how to be able to do these things, but I'm legally prevented from doing so. It's absolutely stupid in my opinion, but it's just the way things are. So especially a lot of these Chinese herbs that are really awesome, Westerners don't know them, they don't order them. Chinese practitioners know them, but don't know how to apply them spagyrically, especially because in Chinese medicine, it's very rare that you get just one herb as a remedy. They almost always put together formulations and use herbs in formulation capacity in order to synergize and to create remedies that help to bring balance back to the constitution and back to the individual. So we always have a ton of Chinese herbs. So Cody got sent home with a ton of these different Chinese herbs, most of which he had never even seen before. And it's going to be really cool to see how he grows as an herbalist and is able to utilize these things. So Cody, if you're watching, I'd love to hear from you and see what you've done with any of those, or if they're just pissing your roommates off by taking up extra space in the kitchen. At any rate, we got a little less than halfway done with that bottling project in about 1.5 to 2 days. I still have a very significant amount of 84-ounce jars over there, and I will be consolidating them. During that same week, I also blended up more Heavy Metal Detox RX with a special type of chlorella that is scientifically shown to help to remove heavy metals with an even greater efficacy. It's called chlorella pyridonosa. I'm excited to hear your guys' feedback for those of you who have used Heavy Metal Detox in the past versus those of you who use it now, to see if you can notice any difference. The taste profile, the color profile, all those things look almost identical. You'd have to be very, very sensitive to taste in order to be able to pick that up. I'm very, very sensitive with my taste profiles and scent profiles, and there's not much organoleptic difference. But physiologically, I can tell the difference. It has a much more binding action to it, and it's able to remove things much easier. So I'm hoping that all of you enjoy this. We made enough of the cilantro and enough of the chlorella pyridonosa to make, I think, 64 or more ounces of that formula. So we have enough, and we should be stocked for quite a while. Which should be a relief because y'all are fiends for the Heavy Metal Detox. That is probably, of all of the formulas that we have, that is, if not the hottest seller, that is one of the hottest sellers. And then at the end of the month, on the 28th of the month, we headed out to Blue Star Resort and Retreat Center in Columbia Falls, Montana, which is just about 20 to 30 minutes away from the entrance to West Glacier in Glacier National Park. Excellent, beautiful area of the world. If you haven't been out there, definitely go. Also consider reaching out to Jen at Blue Star Resort and Retreat Center and let her know that we sent you. It is probably one of the most amazing places to stay, in my opinion. They have an amazing Finnish sauna on site, or sauna as they would call it in Finland. It's just an extraordinary experience. They have lots of different things. They have bell tents, they have a couple of yurts, they have a big guest lodge, they have a big outdoor kitchen, they have a cabin, they have a house. There's all sorts of different types of situations depending on how you want to travel, who you're traveling with, how big your party is, etc. And they're also available for retreats, specifically in the fall, which leads me to my next point. We are tentatively looking at planning a retreat out there because there is so much biodiversity and such an amazing amount of medicines that we can work with out there that we would like to host a nice little alchemical and spagyric retreat and teach people on site how to be able to harvest the herbs, prepare the herbs, work with the herbs spagyrically, make several different items of pharmacopoeia, and possibly also a retreat just to teach people about spagyric medicinal theory and medical theory and applications and so on and so forth as well. So we don't have anything on the books yet. We're still kind of finalizing, working towards some details and some descriptions. But if there's anything that you guys are interested in learning in particular, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know, because we can put together just about anything. Half of the problem of me teaching classes is I don't know what everybody wants to learn, and I can teach just about anything. So if there are a lot of people who want to learn the same thing, I can put together a course for just about anything. So if you have any suggestions, don't hesitate to let us know. Otherwise, the offering will be at the mercy of my own selection, and I'll come up with something that I think that people should learn, regardless of whether or not you want to learn it. But yeah, that pretty much takes us up through the end of June and early July, so that's it. Again, I'm glad to report that it was a relatively slow month. If you have any questions for us, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@phoenixaurelius.org. And until next time, be safe and have a great summer.